Welcome to the Financial Coaches Podcast, where we talk about how to build your practice from startup to scale up while being the kind of coach your clients crave. Finally, a podcast for financial coaches. Here are your hosts, Maria Casillas and Cody Sizemore.
Well, hello and welcome back to the Financial Coaches Podcast. My name is Cody Sizemore and I'm joined here by my lovely co-host, Maria Casillas. And we are going to be talking about something that I think is very important. We've talked about it in the past a lot, but this is something that for whatever reason, no matter how many times we talk about it, it always keeps coming up and coming up and coming up. And I think that it'll always come up. We could probably make an episode about this topic literally every single week, and it would still come up, kind of thing. So, we're just going to beat the dead horse today. But before we get into any of that, I just want to say a few things. Number one, if this is your first time listening, hey, nice to meet you. That's awesome. Thanks for being here. Hopefully you get some value from today. And if you do, we would really appreciate a follow. We would really appreciate a rating, a review, a share, whatever it might be. Because one thing that you're going to learn about us is that we don't really like money. Meaning that we don't get paid for this, meaning that we don't have any ads. So the only way for us to actually have this show be a success is through your support. So that would be super appreciated. But if you are a person who's been listening for weeks, months, years, and you listen every single week, we just want to say a special shout out to you because you are what we call our every weekers. And we really appreciate you because you're the type of people who, like I just said, keep the show going simply by supporting and listening. So we really do appreciate you guys. And we're thankful that you guys are here in 2026 as well. And the last thing is, if you haven't yet, or if you don't know yet, we do have a really awesome Facebook group to where you can get connected with us. You can get connected with our community of like-minded coaches and share your story, ask questions, pick our brains on certain things, whatever it might be. And that's a really good place to connect with us directly. So if you haven't joined that Facebook group, is called The Financial Coaches Community by New Money Habits. It's free to join. It's simple to join. So join it, say hi, and we'll say hi back. With that being said, Maria,
Sure.
welcome in. How are you
Thank you.
today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Awesome.
Hmm.
So you ready to talk about this topic again?
I mean, I I appreciate that you say we're beating a dead horse because, this is at the core a topic that we talk about often. But in a way, I think there's kind of a nuance that we are talking about today. And
I agree.
so, yeah, okay,
Mhm.
but that's good. So it might sound a little bit different to our listeners, even if they've heard this before. But yes, I am ready to talk about it. I'm excited about it. I think it's something that, like you said, it comes up over and over and over again. And so I think it's going to be good that our listeners at least hear this one more time this week, and and kind of let it settle into their hearts and go, okay, I understand now why I need to do things maybe a little bit differently.
Yeah, definitely. So you were the one who kind of brought this topic to the table.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna steal your thunder. I'm gonna go ahead and let you kind of take the ball and run with it, and then I'll catch up with you. So fill us in. What are we talking
That
about?
that's pretty funny. No, I was actually just doing a little bit of research to figure out what are some of the things that are top of mind for financial coaches right now. And one of the things that came up in that search was that this idea of people are a little bit more emotionally overwhelmed versus financially uninformed. And that immediately struck for me, Cody, because I think that there are individuals who truly are uninformed. That is true. And I think it would
Mhm.
be ridiculous for us to assume that everybody knows all of the things because we don't know all of the things. And I don't know all of the things, you don't know all of the things, and we're in this industry. And yet there are assumptions I think made where since we are in this industry and we've been kind of around it for so long that everybody else around us knows all of the things that we know. And this could be for something simple as what's the difference between simple interest and compound interest? That sounds like something that everybody knows. And that's not necessarily the case. I just want to make sure that our listeners know that you and I remind ourselves of that because once we're in something for so long, it becomes natural speak for us. but that's not the case for a lot of other people. So I do want to just point out that I understand not everybody is fully financially informed. But I think what a lot of times happens, Cody, is that when, especially when we're working with individuals, they're sitting across the table for us or across the computer screen in most cases these days, and we just throw information at them and we don't slow down to just be where they are emotionally. And I think
Mhm.
because so many of our clients are actually emotionally overwhelmed, it gets to this point where if we skip over that step, all we're doing is feeding that emotional overwhelm. And so that's really the basis for what I think we should just chat about a little bit today.
Yeah. So I know I'm trying to put myself in like the shoes of the listener. I know that people probably listen to you say that and they're like, but what do you mean by emotionally overwhelmed?
Okay, fair. Yeah.
So
So,
listen.
well, yeah. So if you think about the way that finances work in our lives, we have I know the terms, relationship with money have kind of become a little bit of a buzzword, buzz
Mhm.
phrase. So I want to be careful with that. But we do relate to the way that we use money, the way that we view money, the way that money makes us feel. And so I wanted to just share that the idea of all of those feelings and all of those emotions that come up, if we don't know how to handle some of that, it will become overwhelming for us. So that's what I mean ultimately by emotional overwhelm. Does that help?
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll jump in here and I'll say this. You are correct that there are definitely people who are definitely uninformed because, I'll talk to people and they're like, I was never taught this. I
Mhm.
avoided it. I don't know anything. Like,
Mhm.
and,
Mhm.
that's fine. Right. Like we can teach them that. But
Yes,
then
we
there's
were all
people.
uninformed at one point, right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
For sure.
Yep.
And then there's people who, hey, maybe they're an accountant.
Mhm.
Maybe they, are a financial analyst. Maybe they've been through some sort of, you know, financial program before, um, and it didn't really stick, right? So like those types of people, they might know some of the stuff like informational based, um, but for some reason it's just not it's not sticking, it's not landing, right?
Mhm.
Um, and then there's also another kind of sense here too that like I think that anyone can be informed because we live in the information age. And I mean, if you want to learn how to budget, you can literally go on YouTube and type in how to budget. Or you can, if you want to learn the difference between simple interest or compound interest, you could pull up Chat GPT and you can ask, well, what's the difference between simple interest and compound interest? Like, so there's ways to be informed. And I think that there's a lot of people who've tried to get information,
Mhm.
but that bears the question, okay, but why is the information not enough? Right? And
Mhm.
I think that that's the conversation that needs to be had.
Yeah. And I do want to have it. I also want to say that sometimes just because we have all that information at the fingertips, it can create that emotional overwhelm. So I just want to throw that out there
Very
too,
true.
because those two things are intertwined. Before we move on to the conversation, I just want to point out like the individual that you mentioned, maybe the CPA or the person who has this training. I think that sometimes that just having all of that information actually can feed our unhealthy relationship with money. And that
Mhm.
oftentimes comes in the form of we are obsessed with the numbers. We're so worried about like how much is going to be in retirement because we know we've been plugging numbers into systems for decades for some people. And all of a sudden we're like, oh well, I don't know what mine is. And we start to wrap up our identity in how much money we have for retirement and that kind of thing. And so I just wanted to throw that out there that sometimes the most informed ones you would think it's not that much of a problem, but
Mhm.
oftentimes it actually is because of how it affected the relationship with money.
Yeah, I completely agree. And One thing that I've found, especially with those individuals, like the financial professionals that I've
Hmm.
spoken to who've reached out to me, a lot of them are actually like quite embarrassed about their own personal finances. Like I've talked to people and they'll say like, I feel stupid, or they'll say like, I can sit here and I can balance a multi-million dollar budget at work, but I can't figure out my own finances. Like there's a lot of shame wrapped
Yeah.
up in those individuals. And that just goes right into what we're talking about, where it's like,
Yep.
well, it's not the lack of information, it's actually the emotional side of things, right?
Yeah.
Um, and even outside of that, like if you're not a financial professional, there's a lot of, emotional things that could happen around money. Maybe there's some challenges within their marriage because of that. Maybe they had a bad upbringing around money, and they think that money is an evil thing. I mean, there's the list can go on and on and on, right?
Mhm.
But I think that what would make sense and what would be beneficial for us to kind of like dive into is maybe how can we actually help people uncover what they need to see, and then also maybe hear what they need to hear, so they can then make the shifts that they need to make in order to rise above this once and for all.
Yeah. And there's where it might sound like we're beating a dead horse because we've talked over and over and over on the show about the difference between being a solid financial coach and just a budget coach.
Right.
And we don't, it sounds like we're saying that in a derogatory way, oh, I'm just a budget coach. Just know that we all started out that way. and
Hmm. Yeah.
because we didn't know any better. But that was a natural progression for us when we recognized that. But and what we mean by just a budget coach, and we're using air quotes around that, is that we really are just sitting down with somebody and trying to help them figure out a budget. Some people come to us thinking that that's exactly what they want and what they need.
Hmm.
And when we are really green and starting out, oftentimes that's exactly what we also believe they want and they need. As we develop as coaches and we start to really hone in on the skill set of asking solid questions, we recognize, oh, that's not actually what they need. They might think that that's what they want, and sometimes that's what they're getting in the process. But we really tend to like just slow down and ask, what are some of the things that can get to the heart of what's going on, and that's really what we're going to be honing
Hmm.
in on today.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And we're not saying that the budgeting side of things is unimportant. It's extremely important, and you should absolutely have a part of that in your coaching process. But there's just so much more to it, you
Yeah.
know. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that there's a lot of things, there's a lot of different angles that you can take. Like you can really just, focus on like, hey, like what is this person's relationship with money? So what is that like? So how they feel about money, how they see money, what they believe about money, what their behaviors are, stuff like that, right? Like where that kind of comes from, all that good stuff. You can focus on that. You can focus on why they want to accomplish what they want to accomplish, as we've talked about in the past as well. Like really digging deep and getting that like intentional, meaningful why, something that's worth fighting for. And you can also focus on one thing that I actually really like to do with people is focusing on not just what they're doing or why they're doing it, but actually who they want to be throughout the whole process, who they really want to grow into,
Mhm.
what their standards are, how they think about themselves, how they carry themselves, all those different types of things, right? So there's a lot of different angles that you can take. Uh, but at least on my end, I think that it would probably make sense to maybe focus on the relationship with money side of things, and maybe just talk about like a couple strategies, a couple questions that you can do to kind of get that ball rolling and to open up these conversations so you can see what's under there, and take the next step from there. So, you cool if we do go down that route,
Of
Maria?
course. Yeah.
So I'll share what I do. Um, you can give me some feedback on that. You can share what you do if you'd like. I'll try and keep it simple. I'll try and keep it brief as well. Um, but I actually do this Really, right out of the gate. So during my consultations, I will ask these questions. And then also in that very first meeting that we have, I tell people, I'm like, when we hop into our coaching program, we're not jumping into the numbers right away,
Mhm.
which actually makes people a little bit upset sometimes.
Mhm.
But I'm like, that's fine. Like, let's be upset. Like, I'm
Mhm.
gonna give you what you need. You know, you'll get what you want, but I'm gonna give
Mhm.
you what you need first, right?
Mhm.
So that first meeting, we don't really talk about the numbers at all. We actually just really focus on this topic, and then we jump into the numbers in the second meeting, kind of thing.
Mhm.
But in my consultations, I'll ask them a lot of questions about, their numbers, their goals, everything like that. Everything that I think that you would typically do in a normal consultation. But I love asking two questions that I feel are really, really telling. And those two questions would be this. Number one is, when you think about money in general and everything that you have going on right now, what sort of thoughts, feelings, and emotions do you typically experience? That's a big telling question.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you, I get some juice
I'll bet.
from that sometimes.
One of the things I love specifically about that question is what's couched in the middle. Because you said when you think about money and everything that's going on right now,
Mhm.
dot, dot, dot. So when they're hearing that, do you think that they're hearing everything that's going on around money? Or do you think that they're hearing everything that's going on right now?
Everything that's going on right now.
I think that that's what they're hearing, and I think that's oftentimes why you're getting such juice.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Because, like, if I were to just ask the question, like, when you think about the topic of money in general,
Yep,
well, I'm going to get a general answer,
yep,
right?
yep, yep, yep.
But I lead with that to like soften it a little bit.
Mhm,
And then
mhm,
I'll hit them with the actual question, which is, with everything that's happening right now,
mhm.
right?
Yep,
Um, and I'll get a lot of good answers. People will tell me, like, well, you know, I experience a lot of anxiety, or I have a lot of guilt, or I have a lot of shame, or, I feel overwhelmed, or, like, whatever it might be, or, hey, like, this is something that is a really big, contention point in my marriage, like, whatever it might be. Right.
mhm,
And just getting those answers from people, that opens the door to some really, really amazing conversations, you
yeah,
know, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But that's one question I'll ask. The other question I'll ask as a follow up question would be this. And it is, if you had to be 100% honest with yourself, what do you feel is the biggest thing that's been holding you back from having your money be where you ultimately want it to be? And that's another really good question that gives me a lot of really good juice as well.
mhm.
Um, Main point in that question, I feel, and you can tell me how you feel about this, is, if you had to be 100% honest with yourself. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Can you repeat the last part of the question?
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, if you had to be 100% honest with yourself, what do you feel
Is
has
holding
been
me
the biggest thing that's been holding you back from having your money be where you ultimately want it to be?
back. Mhm, mhm. So, I'm curious, this is a weird curiosity question. How long of a pause typically do you get between the time you ask the question and the time that they answer it?
So before I even ask the question, I tell them, I'm like, this is a really big question. So if you
Mhm.
need to take a moment to think about it, take your time.
'Kay, good.
And I always make a little joke. I'm like, I got myself a cup of coffee. I can just sit back and relax, right? Uh, Sometimes people will be like, I don't even need to think about it. I already know what it is,
Mhm,
right? And then other times there will be actually a long pause, 30
mhm,
seconds, maybe even a minute before they answer.
mhm,
Either way, I'm appreciative of it.
mhm.
Um, but I'll get answers like, "Oh, well, it's myself," and I'll be like, "Okay, well, what do you mean by that?"
Right, like, that's a
Yeah,
little bit too broad.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then they'll give me
Mhm,
the real answer, and they might say something like, "Oh, I'm really impulsive. I spend a lot of money," or, um, you know, it's me in the sense of, like, it's my mindset. Like, I just don't think it's possible, you know, or, uh, you know, it might be something even regarding their marriage where they're like, I feel like I just have to have control over everything and I don't allow my spouse to help me kind of thing.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
there's a lot of really good stuff that comes up from
Mhm.
those.
Yeah. Yeah. Where do you take it from there? Because I know you said I'm going to ask
Mhm.
two main questions. Is this something that you typically will just kind of note and then deal with later? Or do you do more follow up right there in that session?
I do more follow up right there. Yep.
Okay.
So what I'll do is I'll ask those questions and then I'll say, okay, so whatever kind of stood out to me, usually it's like one thing in the feelings question and one thing in the holding back question.
Hmm.
I'll tell them like I really want to understand these on a deeper level, and my intention is so that I understand this on a deeper level, so that you understand yourself on a deeper level, that we can see like what this is, where it's coming from, and hopefully find something that might help you take that first step to overcome these things, right?
Hmm.
Um, and they're like, okay, well, cool, like let's do it. So then I would open up those conversations, and I would just tell them like, hey, I'm going to open up these lines of communication. I'm going to ask a really broad question to kick things off with. You're going to give me an answer, and then we're just going to start talking until I feel like stopping. Until I feel like I have a good understanding, kind of thing. And then we just start doing that, and that's where a lot of the open-ended questions
Hmm.
start to come into play. I actually did this yesterday with a consultation yesterday, and as I opened up the line of questioning on him, he kept saying for the first two questions, his initial response was, "Ooh, that's a tough question. Ooh, that's a tough question." And then he
Hmm.
would think about it. He'd give me a good answer, and then I would follow up with him. And I said something. I forgot exactly what I said. And he goes, "Man, you're good at this." And I'm like, I'm just asking questions. I'm asking open ended questions. And you're giving me the answers, kind of thing.
But that
Um,
is a skill set.
right. And that's a learned skill set. I was not good at
Mhm.
first. It's definitely a perishable skill, meaning like you need to use it, otherwise you'll lose it, kind of thing.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
but I think that by doing that, that gives you the actual answers. Someone will say, "Oh, well, I'm anxious." Well, by the end of that conversation, you'll know exactly what's causing that anxiety. You know exactly how that's affecting them. You know exactly, maybe what's going to help them overcome it, kind of thing.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
by you taking that approach, at least in my experience, it's unlike something that they've ever experienced before when they talk to a quote unquote money person.
Mhm.
And because of that difference, because they actually felt heard, because they actually felt understood, that's what makes them feel like this is the right fit, kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So,
Well, one thing I think that it does for them is it's kind of like a verbal journal. You
mhm,
know,
yeah,
when we're journaling, there's no one else just asking those questions, but that's why some people like those journals that have prompts in there, But
mhm,
what you're doing is like you're being that journal prompt for somebody. And what it's doing is it's kind of forcing them to state out loud what it is that's going on. And so, yes, it will help you as a coach to recognize some of that stuff for them later on, but ultimately, it's gonna help them
right,
recognize when those things are happening when they're not sitting across from you, and they're gonna go, "Oh, oh, this is what I learned through Cody," or, "This is what I learned through Maria," or, "This is what I learned through this conversation with whoever." Because that is the power of
mhm,
doing what we do. It's so that they can figure that out later on, but
yeah.
just having them verbalize that is so powerful because that's where they're gonna be able to make that connection later on.
So I'm gonna jump in here. That guy I was speaking to yesterday,
Uh-huh.
he had one of those moments. He said something along the lines of this, and I'm gonna butcher it a little bit, but it was something along the lines of like, he told me he answered one of the questions, and then he had a moment with himself to where he verbally said, "That might be it.
Mm,
Wow,
mhm,
I actually never thought about that, but that might have been it this whole
mhm,
time."
mhm.
And I was like, "Cool, we got it." Like,
Yeah, 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 I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and it was very, very similar to that. Yeah,
mhm.
like, the response was very similar, like,
And
"Oh." I
it
didn't
wasn't
put that
him saying
together
that.
before.
Yeah, and I want to be clear. It wasn't him saying that in response of something that I said to him.
Right.
It was
Yes,
something that he said,
exactly.
and then he
Yes.
realized that, right?
Yes. Yes. Well, and I think that's where the real power is because I've always said, you know you better than I'll ever know you. Like there's nothing that I'm gonna say that's going to bring this giant insight. There might be something I can reflect back to you that you're like, oh, I either didn't see it that way before, or I didn't realize that other people are interpreting it this way. But the real insights come just like you mentioned, Cody. Like they're talking it through. You are giving them the space to do that. And then they're like, oh, I hadn't put that together. Like that might be the
Yeah.
thing. And it's so funny because this individual said almost those exact same words that you said, that your client said. Like, oh, that might be it. Like,
Mhm.
he had been wrestling with this for years on something that I was talking about for years. And all of a sudden he's like, oh, that might be it. That might be that connection. So it is really neat to see that happen.
Yeah, yeah. It's fun when that
It
happens,
is.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And
Um,
then they're like, "You're good at this," right? Like they put it on you. And I'm like, "I'm glad that it's working for you, but I didn't do anything." And then we have to realize actually we did do something because like you just noted earlier, it is a skill, it's a learned skill. And so we had to take the time and the effort and the practice to learn that and practice it, but we didn't come up with the insight. They did.
yeah, yeah. So I'll say one more thing, and unless there's anything else that you want to throw in, I think that maybe we wrap
Yeah,
it up from
good.
here.
Yeah.
Um, I know that there's probably someone listening, and they're probably sitting here and they're thinking, okay, a lot of this makes sense. A lot of this seems valuable. I could see this being beneficial to me and the people that I serve. So maybe I should start trying some of these things.
Mhm.
But they might be a little nervous too because they've never done it before
Mhm.
and they don't want to mess it up and potentially miss out on a new client or fall flat for a current client kind of thing.
Mhm.
Um, my message to you, if that is you, and you're like, oh my gosh, Cody just read my brain. Yeah, that's right. Get used to it. No, I'm, I'm just kidding. My message to you would be this: just try it.
Uh-huh.
Just try it. Um, you're probably not going to be very good at this at first, and you may not get that client. Now, you
Yeah.
might, but you might not. Um, but you're never actually going to build that skill unless you start doing it, you
Yeah.
know?
Mhm.
Um, so that's my message to you is that like the hardest part about anything is getting started with it, which is something that I tell, people as they onboard with me all the time. Like this is going to be the hardest part is getting started. And that's very true with this as well. So take that leap, give yourself that chance and allow yourself to grow, even though there might be some pain associated with it.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you added all that last beat because I was gonna say my message was you're gonna mess up, but I was gonna sound a lot more pessimistic. So, I'm so I'm grateful that you padded that with some compassion there. No, but
Yeah.
for real, he's right. Just start because you will mess up because we all messed up, and that's how we learned is we just got better. And the one thing I will add is feel free to grab some accountability with that. I mean, the way that I messed up the most was actually in practice, and I know that sounds so cringe. Like, what do you mean you practice that with people? It's okay to find another financial coach and actually practice this together. I just want
Yeah.
to let you know that that's all right. Then you might not lose that client, but you're still building that practice at the same time. So, don't be so embarrassed that you're not willing to reach out and get that help and that can be found in our group if you're looking for somebody to just kind of jump in with you can ask for that. You can also do paid practice, I guess, like having whether it's hiring someone from New Money Habits to walk you through that process. But it's not something that you have to pay for. You can find other coaches. So just wanted to throw that
Mhm.
out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Alrighty. Well, I think that we're good. How do you feel?
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for beating that dead horse again in a beautifully
No
nuanced
problem.
way.
No problem. Alrighty, guys. Well, thanks for listening to another episode of the Financial Coaches Podcast. We hope to see you on the next episode next week.
See you then.
Thank you for listening to the Financial Coaches Podcast, brought to you by New Money Habits and Sizemore Financial Coaching. Submit your questions to our hosts by emailing podcast@newmoneyhabits.com. Be sure to subscribe to be notified of future episodes and join our growing group of like-minded coaches on Facebook. And until next time, happy coaching.